Welcome to the Personal Podcast, where we get to meet the real personality behind the professional. I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Turner today, who is Police and Crime Commissioner for Cleveland Police. So straight into the questions, Steve.
Okay.
You have had 18 allegations thrown at you since being in this role, including sexual abuse, abusing police powers, and handling stolen goods. Is any of it true?
None of it whatsoever. It's all politically motivated attacks, allegations designed to ruin my reputation, allegations which are leaked to the press before they're put into the public domain so they get the most traction. And it's appalling. It's appalling that it's allowed to happen in the way that it is.
Out of everything you've been accused of, what's the worst?
By far the worst is a sexual assault, without a shadow of a doubt. So I think the first allegation that came my way was that I was sacked for systematic theft, which was wrong. But that was spun out from the back of the fact that I had a police caution from 20 odd years ago. And that in itself was bad enough, and that created a lot of things. But then literally a week after that, the same person that made that allegation then wrote to the chief constable with this other allegation and the sexual assault one, and that went on for months. That went on for 6 months. And whilst I was confident I'd never done anything and there was no truth in it, I'm also in a position where I have to encourage women and girls to come forward. That's historical. That's part of the job I do. Violence against women and girls is a huge issue right now. So I can't come out and jump up and down and condemn the fact that I believe I'm being falsely accused, because I don't want women to think that they wouldn't be heard. Yeah. So you've got to trust the process. And thankfully, I did trust the process, and 6 months later, it turns out there was no victim whatsoever, so that they couldn't identify a victim. And then that makes you angry as well, because you think, I've had to go through all of this because somebody chose to create this storyline and then release it to the press. If I'd have been an ordinary member of the public, that would have never hit the press.
And why do you think someone's doing this?
Politics. It is purely politics. There is not every allegation that's come my way has been politically motivated in some way, shape, or form. And some of, like I said, there are 3 serious allegations that came one way. One that I was sacked for systematic theft, and I think one of the things you've got to understand about the PCC role is you can't stand to be elected if you've got a criminal conviction. So I knew that before I even started.
Yeah.
And a caution is a criminal conviction. What lots of people don't know or understand is about 1 in 3 men in the country have some type of crime or some type of record. And 85% of those, that happens when they're under 30. Okay. So I think there's a much bigger picture to look at that when we're talking about these things, to say what's driving that, what's causing that. So in many respects, I'm no different to lots of people, but I am Police and Crime Commissioner, so I understand how some people might view it. But the other side of that is I'm a firm believer in rehabilitation and restorative justice and all those things. And a caution doesn't even show on a DBS check after 6 years. So my enhanced DBS check doesn't show anything whatsoever. And that's what I believe. And I do a lot of campaigning now to support people who've been in touch with the law, or been in touch with the criminal justice system in whatever way, shape or form, to make sure that we can help them going forward, because that's the right thing to do. Yeah,
absolutely. And another thing that you've probably had thrown at you, have you ever been arrested?
No. So I'll go back to the sexual assault one. Most people would look at that and say, well, he's been accused, and you hear the no smoke without fire rhetoric and things like that. And I'm living proof that there is smoke without fire, because still to this day, and we're 2 years on now, but still to this day, I don't know what I was supposed to have done, right? Who I was supposed to have done it to, or where this allegation came from. I was never arrested. I was never interviewed. I never even had the allegation put to me, because the investigating officer couldn't identify a victim. It was all a third-party allegation who somebody said, I was told, blah, 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 sent that to the Chief Constable, who then had to refer it to the IOPC, who then had to refer it to another force to be investigated. It's horrific.
Yeah, it sounds horrific. And how does it feel to see yourself in the media in this way?
It was mentally really tough. It was because it's all right me knowing what's there. My family obviously stood by me 100%. I can't fault that. My wife was an absolute rock. Without her, I wouldn't be sat here today after that.
But it must still affect your family.
Yeah. So I think every single day, you ask the question why somebody would do that to you. And me and my wife regularly sit and talk late into the night, just going over. I mean, at one point, I'm sort of trawling everything I knew, because this allegation that it was made, and it said I committed some offence when I was 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. It was 37 years ago. They're saying I committed an offence. I'm contacting old school friends. I'm people I used to sort of hang around with at the time, and sort of saying, have you any idea? Have you? Because you don't know, and you're second guessing yourself all the time. You think, I know I've done nothing wrong, and even now I've been able to sit with my wife and talk through just random stuff, and you think it's horrific that somebody could do that to you. And I at one point I sought help, so I spoke to a counsellor, and I was diagnosed with a form of PTSD. Mm-hmm. Through that, and it was a horrific time to try and talk through. And I think the thing about it most, the thing that affects us most now is it's impossible to get closure, because you still there's no victim, so there's nobody to say I was accused falsely, because there was never a victim come forward. The person that made that allegation stands behind or I'm only passing on what I was told argument. Mm. And I make no suggestion. And it's the same with the other allegations. I was accused of punching a pensioner as well in a pub. And that was the same individual writing to the Chief Constable saying, I was told this happened. These are the circumstances. Again, no truth in that whatsoever. And what made that allegation worse was the pensioner I was accused of punching is now passed away, and was my father-in-law. Oh. And again, you sort of, how can people do that? So me and my family, my wife was devastated that somebody could accuse me of punching her dead dad.
And you've got children as well. How does it affect your children?
So I've got 3 grown-up boys. At its worst, the middle one came off social media altogether. Couldn't bring himself to open his Facebook and sort of see his dad's name piled all over. The eldest one was really angry about things. You could see that. And the youngest one, he's got a public profile himself because of the job he does. And it was difficult for him. He's a musician. I used to go across to gigs with him all the time, and then I stopped going to some of them. He lost support because we couldn't turn up in some of those public places. We weren't prepared to go anywhere where we weren't fairly confident of the people that would be around us at that time. Mm.
So, with all that in mind, is being in politics worth it?
Some days no. So I do second guess myself all the time as to whether we should do that. But I think I probably need to go back to why I got into politics in the first place for that. So I got into politics. I was a big believer in the Brexit debate. I was a big leaver. I thought that was the right thing. I saw a lot of things going on locally within my local politics. I remember campaigning for certain things, and we'd been talking to our MP, and then our local councillor, and I went across to a council meeting, and I saw councillors sat at the back of the room just sort of filing their nails while this debate's going on. And I think that's appalling. And I'm a big believer. I've always been a big believer in if you're not happy with something, go and do something about it. Don't stand on the sidelines. Don't be one of these people that just stands and shouts at the telly or rants on social media. Get off your backside and go and do something about it. And that's what I decided to do. So I got into local politics because of councillors filing their nails. I got into sort of more national politics because of the Brexit debate. Rightly or wrongly, whatever you think of Brexit, and I could make arguments for both areas. I was on the Leave side of the argument, and that was successful from our perspective of where we were at the time, and we had the referendum to win. I was a regional director for Vote Leave on that. That led me into a role working for an MP locally, which again, you saw a different side of politics.
Right.
So the casework side of what an MP does. So people see MPs, they might see them on the telly and this. What they don't understand is the vast majority of what an MP does is actually not the MP, it's his team or her team. And that casework that comes through, I could go home every day and know that I'd helped somebody one way or the other. And that's a really good feeling. And I wanted to carry that on. And then when the opportunity came up to stand for the Police and Crime Commissioner election, now I started looking at that in 2019. So in 2020, this was pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. I thought, right, actually, I can really get into this and I can really do something here, because I saw what was going on in our local force. We'd been in an appalling state since 2019. It was the worst police force in the country. And I come back to that point. I can shout and I can whinge and I can mourn, or I can step forward and do something about it. So I stepped forward to do something about it. And fortunately, the public have even put their trust in me. And we've had some brilliant success since then. So again, every single day, I can look at what I've achieved. I can look at the grant funding we do. I can look at all of the bits that go with my job and go home most days and think, I've done some good today. And that's what makes politics worth it. Because if you purely look at the other side of it, it's really not. Why would you even get out of bed on the morning to be a politician? Mm-hmm. And nationally at the minute, it's worse. I've never known politics so toxic.
Yeah, it makes me despair a little bit sometimes. But okay, so let's talk about family life. So What's it like running? Well, what's the hardest thing about running the police force, but also being a father to 3 boys?
I think that the hardest thing, and I don't recognise it most days, but every now and again it hits you. It's an organisation with 2,500 people and a £200 million budget, and you're at the head of that, and that takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes mental strength, and because that's where all of your focus is. When you come home, when you've got weekends, you just want to switch off. Right, I like nothing more than just putting my headphones in, listening to a podcast and walking my dog for an hour. And that tends to be how I try and decompress.
Right.
But because of that, the knock-on effect is, do I see my boys as much as I'd like to? No. Am I there for them as often as I'd like to be? Probably not. And that's a knock-on effect because public service, I suppose. I don't want to sound so grand. It doesn't feel like that grand. But when you invest so much into helping other people, you do sometimes reflect on the fact that maybe the people that want you at home a bit more don't see you as much as they'd like to.
Yeah. And did you have a good relationship with your father growing up?
So my mum and dad split up when I was 7.
Okay. Do you remember much about that at the time?
No, I remember it was actually the night my granddad died. Oh, mm-hmm. So my mum was distraught. It was her dad, and then things happened, and that sort of spiraled out of control. So I didn't see my dad for a couple of years till he got himself back on track. Then I saw him most weekends. So we lived in Dormanstown at the time. My dad lived in the Thormsby. I spent Saturday morning on the 274, coming in and meet him. He'd meet me off the bus, and so I was about 9-year-old by that point, 8-9-year-old, and that was good. We had some nice time. I've got a half brother and a half sister from his new marriage, and that relationship was fine. then we fell out over some ridiculous stuff, probably the best part of 10 years ago now, and I didn't speak to him for the best part of 10 years. As much of my making as anything else as his making, we've recently started talking again, because life's probably too short. Life is too short. And then obviously I had a stepdad at home, who was, now I look back on think, well, I was probably a terrible teenager for him to deal with. And he probably did really well dealing with me as a teenager, but he had some quirky ways, and I really didn't like his quirky ways.
Yeah.
So that, not ruptions. There was never anything physical or anything like that. But I suppose at that time, even though he was a good man, he was good to my mum, and I still see him now, and I still talk to him now. But we didn't get on at the time. When I was a teenager, we didn't get on.
How were you a terrible teenager?
I've always been older than my years, and I'm opinionated. I was driven for sport. That was my big thing.
Yeah, we'll come on to that.
Yeah, and work, and I wanted my own independence.
Yeah. And
he was very much set in his ways. He had to read the newspaper first. Whatever he wanted on the telly had to be on the telly. And this was at a time where we only had one telly in the house. We didn't have two tellies. So whatever he was watching, and I suppose lots of other kids will have been like that, but I didn't want to be. I wanted my own space. I wanted my own independence. So I was probably a terrible teenager because I wanted my own independence. And to be honest, there's a sticker on my fridge that says, kids leave home now whilst you still know everything.
So true.
And I thought, yeah, that's so right. That's just where I was.
Oh, brilliant. And how do you find being a grandfather compared to being a parent?
I love it. My Princess Amelia, she is amazing. Right? She gets everything she wants. We spoil her rotten when she comes to us. Just yesterday, we had her yesterday morning. She came down. She was painting with us. We just wrapped her up in an old shirt and a baseball cap and give her a paintbrush, and she absolutely loved it. But yeah, she's fantastic. She's fantastic, and she's 6-year-old. And then so she's been my world for the last 6 years. And then we recently inherited another grandchild. One of my sons is with a partner who has a son from a previous relationship, and Noah's Noah, I'm sure, will become a big part of our life as well.
Oh, that's lovely as well. And a dilemma for you: would you rather your children joined the police or became politicians?
Join the police all day, every day. Yeah, there's no question whatsoever. Not that any of them would want to. Right now, I think they're pretty set on their own careers right now. But yeah, policing is a fantastic, even for all of its grief, it is still a fantastic occupation. Mm-hmm. That is so rewarding for the people that do it. Politics, I can take the personal reward out of it, but if I was trying to justify the trade-off, it really isn't for most people.
Yeah, and it must be even harder to see your children go through that what you've gone through as well, rather than yourself, maybe even in some way.
Yeah, the only time I've ever been glad the fact that my mum passed away at a fairly young age was going through this, because the thought of her seeing what I had to go through. I mean, I was the front page of 27 newspapers. The Northern Echo ran a campaign to get rid of me. Local council leaders were writing to each other to say, let's write a letter demanding his resignation. Now the MPs have paved the way. These things were all out there. There was 2 former MPs tweeted about me 70 times in 24 hours between them, just resharing, reposting, commenting. And for my mum to have seen that would have put her in a grave. Would have absolutely. I mean, it was bad enough for my dad. My mother-in-law has been an absolute rock. She's been devastated by what she had to see. But I am glad my mum wasn't here to see that.
Yeah. How old were you when your mum passed away?
She was 57, so I'll have been. It's terrible. I've been about 40.
How did you cope?
Yeah, it was really tough. I suppose there was a bit of guilt in there. I'd rang up to speak to her on the Thursday, and my dad said she wasn't very well and she was asleep, and he'd go get her to speak to her. And I said, no, if she's asleep, tell her not to worry about it. I said she'd been a bit poorly. I said, no, don't worry, I'll pop over and see her at the weekend. And then he rang me on the Saturday morning. I was actually at the opticians with my youngest son, and I got this phone call to say she'd had a heart attack. And by the time I got to the house, they were putting her in an ambulance. And by the time we got to the hospital, she'd passed away. So from that perspective, it was really tough, because you just think, well, what if I'd have gone to see her? Is there anything I could have done? Might I have insisted on her seeing a doctor? You go through all of those things. And in hindsight, it's not right. You sort of look and you think that it is what it is. When your time's up, your time's up. And I suppose the biggest impact it has now is, so my mum was 57 when she died. Her brother passed away at 49 and my granddad passed away at 45.
Right.
All with heart problems. So now every time I sort of say, I'm not feeling too clever, the family's like, get yourself checked. What are you doing this? Go to the doctors. So yeah, it's a family history, and I suppose we shouldn't think. But my argument is all three. Yes, all three of them died tragically young, but all three of them smoked like troopers and didn't look after. So I've never smoked, so I'm fairly confident in that.
Do you still get your heart checked though?
I still get checked out. Yeah, I'm still regularly go.
Good.
And that's I suppose that's the other thing that this has done to me. So because of that family history, the stress and the anxiety this last 2 years has put me under. I've probably spent 3 or 4 evenings in A&E with a suspected heart attack. Right, that in the end has turned out to not be a heart attack. But as soon as you explain on the phone what it is, even to the point where I've been and said, I'm not going to hospital, I know what it is, I'm just, and they said, no, you are going, because if this time it is something serious, you need to be where you need to be.
Can you describe some of the symptoms you've been through?
I've seen me, so that palpitations is one thing, but I've seen me have it normally get tingling down your arm, tightness of chest, pressure, blurred vision, all of the things that anybody who looks up the symptoms of a heart attack will tell you are there. I have had on a frighteningly regular basis over the last 2 years, and it's purely stress related, absolutely stress related. And that's what I said. I find ways of decompressing and doing that.
Yeah.
So I literally got so bad, just partly to prove I was healthy and partly to give myself some focus. I ran the London Marathon 2 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
No, I hated it. I got cramp after 15 miles.
Oh, no.
And literally most of the last 10 miles, I limped my way around. So it was horrific. But
you did it.
So glad I did it.
Yeah.
My medal is the same colour as everybody else's that day. So, and it's there, and it's pride of place. I've got my vest and my medal framed, and it sits in my office at work.
Just a quick message from our sponsor, Be Daily. If you'd like all the relevant business news that you need to know on a daily basis delivered directly to your inbox, please subscribe to Be Daily. Oh, lovely. And did that help kind of get you through some of the stress, the training, the physical exertion?
Yeah, because literally, so 2 things. The training, I had to focus on everything that went with it. Because me and my wife are so close, what she did was she got on a bike. She's not a cyclist in any way. So she got on a bike and she cycled with me. So when I ran, she cycled. So we had, during the training, we had hours and hours just to talk and just to be together and try and clear our heads, because as mentally tough as it was for me, it was equally as tough, but in a different way for her.
Yeah. And with your symptoms of stress, did you tend to find it that you had the main symptoms when you were going through the height of it, or was it a delayed reaction?
No, it was certainly the PTSD I was diagnosed with was very much almost straight after the allegations, because those allegations, the 3 main ones, I think they're embedded in my brain. So the first one was made in the middle of September. The second one, the sexual assault allegation, was made just at the end of September, but I didn't find that out till the first week in November. So I found that on the first week in November, and then by the first week in December, the third one landed. So in that space of 3 months, well, two months really, I went from being on an absolute high, brand new job, lots of work to do, really buzzing about it, to then thinking, I've still got to do that job. Because none of those challenges I faced in my role, like you said, that 2,500 people in an organisation, £200 million budget, that's still there. That still has to be dealt with. Whilst everything else. And there's no mechanism for a PCC to take time off. So you can step away from it. So I could go sick, but I was told the investigation could take up to a year. If a PCC isn't in role for 6 months, there has to be an election. Okay. So people were saying, well, step away, step back until it's all sorted. I'm saying, well, I can't, because if I resign while it's, then that's it, the job's gone. Yeah. I can't suddenly come back. Yeah. Right. So that wasn't an option. Stepping away wasn't an option to do that. And I don't have a deputy either, which is a choice. I don't want to spend that public money. So again, there was nobody to delegate my job to either at that point. So yeah, I think that the stress and the anxiety started immediately after. I think the first heart scare I had was in the weeks after the sexual assault allegation. But sometimes after that, it's no random rhyme or reason. It might be, I've come off Twitter, for example. I don't do Twitter anymore because every single day there's something on there having a pop, and you think that's triggering, and you just, people see politicians as fair game. Yeah. You wouldn't abuse any other job in the way you abuse politicians. Yeah. And I think more than that, a number of times I've looked to seek legal action for some of the things that have been said or done towards me. That in itself causes a problem, because the moment you report something to the police, I then get it. One of the allegations was I'm using police resources, and it's like, well, I'm entitled to make a thing. I mean, you should be mindful of what you put on social media. So he said, well, actually, I've got to sit there and I've got to let people abuse me. And because I'm the PCC, I can't even say, well, you're wrong or you're a hypocrite. One lady took a complaint right through. I called her a troll and a hypocrite, right? And she made a formal complaint about the fact I called her a hypocrite. And the panel said, oh, well, you really shouldn't have done that as a police and crime commissioner. I'm like, well, but she's a hypocrite. That is a fact. Based on what she'd done and what she'd said, she was an absolute hypocrite.
So it's almost like, because you're a politician and we're all entitled to our opinions, apparently. Yeah. But you are fair game for any, what might also be considered as hate crime if it was happening to anyone else. Yeah,
I've had this debate. Sometimes I sat with some students the other week, and I said that, and I said, if the stuff that was aimed at me for being a politician of a particular colour was aimed at somebody because of the colour of my skin, because of my religious beliefs, because of my sexuality, it would have been an absolute hate crime, without a shadow of a doubt. But because those things are said because I'm a politician, right, then it's horrific, right? And then get away with that. And it's not just me. So my son, just at the week, so he started singing with a new band. That's what he's done. Somebody put a message on Facebook that said they would no longer watch this band because their new singer once stood as a Tory council candidate. And you think, what type of mentality drives people to A, think like that in the first place, but B, to then actually put that out there and to take the time and the effort to tell somebody. Yeah, that's it. And those things are massively, massively wrong. But that is the tip of the iceberg. And I don't level this at one particular party or anything. There is hate from all sides. Yeah. From all sides. So it doesn't matter, blue, red, yellow, green, brown, whatever. Yeah. It is, if you are a politician, then people think you're fair game. Yeah. And it's a really horrific way to look at the world.
Yeah, I do think it's horrific. I just think what's happened to just respecting someone's opinion, even if you don't believe in it, and also listening to someone's opinion as well. It just, do you ever fear for your safety?
I have over the last 2 years. Yeah. So when the death threat came in, that was at its worst point. And I am by no means the only PCC or the only politician to have death threats. I work for 2 MPs. I saw horrific stuff come through their inboxes to see that. So I've seen that side of it. You see that you've only got to go on any social media site and look at a politician's Facebook page or Twitter feed to see the abuse they then get. And that just fuels. And I think what worries me more is it's really different. The line is really blurred. So if somebody attacks me personally, I either take it and internalise it, or you fight back. But then if you fight back, are you any better than they are? But because of the way social media is in particular, if you don't fight, one of the big debates myself and my wife have is, should we put all of the evidence out there that we have over who made what allegations and how they made them? And there's an argument to say that should be done, because why should that person get away with it? But the flip side of that is, am I then driving hate towards that person, right, when I don't want to do that either?
Yeah.
But why should that person get away with what they've done, trying to destroy my life? And I mean physically at one point trying to destroy my life. And where's the right and wrong in that? Where's the right and wrong in that? Because like I said, if I was an ordinary member of the public and that allegation was made, the police would have done an investigation. I would never have known. But because of the nature of a PCC's role, it has to go to the IOPC. They were then asked by a journalist if it was true that an allegation had been made. They have to admit an allegation has been made. The source of that allegation has already given them chapter and verse about what the allegation is. So then at that point, that's corroborated. So from a journalistic perspective, that story's been corroborated. They can print it. Once one newspaper prints it, every other newspaper can print it. And that's before you even get into parliamentary privilege and the things that I said in the House of Commons that you've got no comeback on whatsoever.
Oh, it's a brutal world. I don't think it'll ever be for me. Let's change the subject.
Please, yes.
Basketball.
Yeah, I love basketball.
Yeah, how good were you?
I was very good.
Yeah.
I worked very hard, right? There were more talented players than me when I was a young man, far more talented players. And physically, for all, I'm 6'4", and I've been 6'4" since I was 12-year-old.
Wow.
There were, as you start to go up the ranks, that's not very tall for the position I played.
Okay, yeah.
So at 6'4" now, to put it in perspective, I'd have to be a guard, and I wasn't. I was a centre, right? And centres now are 7 foot, right? So
wow,
there was literally
crazy.
Physically, I didn't have the attributes to really get up the ladder. But at that time, locally, nationally, at 14, 15-year-old, I was comfortably the best player in the Northeast at 14-year-old.
Amazing. Did you represent your country at all?
I was selected for England under 15s.
Brilliant.
So went across a whole series of trials, sort of both in the Northeast and then regionally in the North, down to Lilleshall tournament, and then selected in a squad of 15 to be part of that England squad, and then broke my ankle. So missed out on actually playing in the games that year. And then the following year, the way the age groups works, I was 16 but playing with under 17s, didn't make the final squad, and then the year after you had to be in full-time education at the time, and I didn't go to college.
Okay.
So couldn't progress that. But played locally, played National League at that point in time, so still playing National League for a local club.
How did you break your ankle?
In a game.
Yeah.
So literally I was going in the school gym for a layup. Lad was coming in behind me. I see him now and again. We still have a giggle about it. I wind him up saying he ruined my international career. But the reality was it was just a pick-up game, and we were doing what we always did. I tried to avoid going in. It was a tight gym. Went up for a layup at pace, trying to avoid going into the wall, and just went over on my ankle.
Did you hear it snap?
Yeah, it was terrible. Oh. And then rehabilitated. That season the rest of the season was a write-off. Rehabilitated, and then coming back, first game back, favouring it as you do, and then tore the ligaments in my other one.
Oh no!
So it was out again. And that ultimately, that put paid to my basketball career, because I've got the ligaments in both my ankles now are shot, completely shot.
Still feel them today.
Still feel it, yeah. And you'll be walking, you might roll an ankle. Most people have rolled an ankle.
Yeah, and that's painful
sore.
Enough, yeah.
I roll my ankle, I could be laid up for 2 days.
Oh.
It's that bad.
Ouch. So. I always think it's just such a shame, isn't it, when sporting careers are ruined by injuries or illnesses.
Do you know what? I loved it, and I loved playing the game. And then I'd done some coaching as well, so that was fun. And then I got into when my two eldest boys were born. When they were like 4 and 5, I took them down to play touch rugby at Red Cat. I'd always loved rugby. I'd loved watching rugby. I'd never played it. By this point, I must have been the best part of 30-year-old, and went along, and then watching them play, and then you sort of helping the coach clear up. Then you end up holding some tackle bags. Then I became a qualified coach for that. And then the third team said, "Oh, do you want to come along and play?" I'd never played a game of rugby before in my entire life, a proper game of rugby. Done a little bit of school, but I played in a football team at school, and rugby was on the same day as my football team played. So I made a choice, and I played football.
Right.
So I think I was 30-year-old when I played my first game of rugby, and loved it. And then played rugby for the best part of 10 years, and then I broke my neck.
Oh my goodness.
So that was in a scrum, playing at Yam, and that was horrific. I couldn't. It was, and I said, broke my neck sounds more dramatic than it was. So I collapsed 2 vertebrae in the top of my spine, and they trapped all my nerves, so I couldn't feel all down my right hand side. I couldn't lie down. They had to do the scan when they put you in the CAT scan, and they put you in the big tube.
Yeah.
They give me enough morphine to dose an elephant just to be able to get me to be able to lie down to get these scans. And I've now got there's like 2 crocodile clip type things in my neck. I remember at the time the surgeon saying when they diagnosed what it was, and he said, "Well, you've got 2 choices." He says, "We can fuse them together, the vertebrae together, and they'll be stronger than they've ever been, and you'll be able to play rugby again, but you'll have limited movement. You won't be able to move your neck in the natural way that you move it now.
Okay.
Or we can put these 2 crocodile clips in, and you'll have full range of movement, but you won't be able to play contact sports again."
Right.
And I'm sat there debating, and my wife's like, "You're nearly 40-year-old. Why are we even sat here thinking about this?" Right? You're getting the clips in. It's like, all right, yeah, she's right. But the fact I so love sport. And that was, I'm sort of thinking, should I, what to do? So anyway, I got the clips in, never played contact sport again. And then as part of my rehabilitation, I decided to do a triathlon for charity.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law had been diagnosed with, I said it passed away, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the hospital, I'm recuperating for something like 16 weeks. Just reading anything and everything, and somebody brought me a triathlon magazine.
I'll have a go at this.
I can do that. And again, Andrea said, "Well, can you swim?" I said, "Well, you know how to swim. We've been on holiday." She said, "I know you can swim, but can you swim? This is a mile swim." I said, "Well, I probably can." She said, "You haven't got a bike?" I said, "Well, I get a bike." And she said, "Well, you hate running." I said, "Well, I'm not really built to be a runner." But I was going to do it, and I did half a dozen for charity, and again was never. It's not my sport. I'm not built for running. I don't particularly enjoy swimming, and bikes are uncomfortable. Yeah. So, but it's one of those things. When I set my mind to something, I just do it.
Where do you think this love of sport comes from?
Don't you know? My mum never even saw me play basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she never even saw me play. Right. But I was into sport from an early, kicking a football. It was like most kids, I was into football. Thought I was going to be the next big thing. Gary Pallister was my hero growing up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was a big centre half at the Borough, and I thought, I loved that.
His mum taught me to swim.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, I grew up watching like the Gary Pallister play, and loved that. My uncle, it was a big Man United fan, but he took me to the Borough games, so I sort of got into that there, and I'd always rather play than watch. Even to the point where, I'm a qualified basketball coach, I'm a qualified rugby coach, but I don't, because once I can't play, I struggle. I can't get my mindset right to sort of to go back and be involved at that level, knowing I can't do it myself. It's hard.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Are you competitive?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would never even let my kids win a game of pool when they're in my view, life's full of disappointment. They need to learn to lose early.
Absolutely. I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before. I was a swimmer and I was brilliant at losing, but it was great life lessons now.
Yeah.
You know, you meet some people. I've employed graduates throughout the years and lovely, lovely people, but they've never experienced failure or disappointment getting through to that level of life. And then as soon as something goes wrong in the workplace and you have to say, well, you know, you haven't done that as well as you could have done, they don't know how to take it.
Yeah. One of my sons was a brilliant rugby player, far better rugby player than I. In fact, one of the lads he used to play alongside has recently been selected for England.
Amazing.
And at the time, as 12, 13-year-olds, Dan was by far the better player. And I remember watching them in a school game, and because he was scoring loads of points, and the coach took him off. And it's like, well, it's not good. We've got to try and even the game up. I'm like, well, yeah, I get that. And to be honest, I suffered that myself. I played a basketball game once, and I got to 98 points in a game, and my coach took me off with 3 minutes to go. And he said, I'm not going to let you get to 100. It's not good for your ego. I was like... it's a massive milestone. So I think, personally, I think schools get that wrong. I think this levelling up, some people are good academically, some people are good with their hands, some people are good with sport, right? We don't, for those kids that aren't good academically but great at sport, they don't sit in a maths lesson and get told the other kids have to take it easy so they don't feel as bad.
That's so true.
Yet the kids that do sport who are really good at maths say, oh, we'll take it easy and we'll mix the teams up. And I say, that's not fair, that's not right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And why basketball? How did you get into that? Because it's not a big sport in the UK.
My dad played basketball.
Okay.
So he did that. And then I grew up in an era where there was a bit of basketball on the telly. So I watched Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, then Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. So the big names from the 80s and early 90s that I really sort of enjoyed watching. And it was a great spectacle, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. My dad built me a basketball net where we lived in Dormanstown. There was no outside basketball courts at the time, so if I wasn't at school, I couldn't train. But I wanted to be doing something with the basketball all the time. So he worked at the steelworks at the time, and I remember him saying, "Oh, there's an old scaffold plank. I'll throw it over the fence for you." So I biked down to the South Gate, right opposite where the old blast furnace was. Got this scaffolding plank, tied it to my bike, and then pushed it back home to Dormanstown. And then another uncle was a welder, so he fashioned me a ring, and we got a piece of plywood. And between the two of them, between my dad and my uncle, they made me a basketball net on a backboard on this scaffolding post, and then they put two brackets on where like a little car parky area. And I couldn't use it all the time, but when there was no cars there, when people were at work, I'd literally manhandle this scaffolding post with this basketball ring on the top of it into the brackets, and then that's where I'd practice my basketball.
Amazing. The efforts. Whereas today you could just buy.
Well, today I'd just buy one, or I'd go over a park and I'd play.
But I take it you couldn't buy these things.
You couldn't. They didn't exist then.
Amazing. And did you have NBA aspirations?
I don't think. No, I always knew I was never going to be an NBA player.
Okay.
Right? But there was a young man a couple of years younger than me when I was playing locally. He managed to. There's a gentleman who used to coach at Mohawks as well. So Middlesbrough Mohawks still exist today. Right. I've actually got one of their shirts framed in my office as well. They gave me a framed shirt with 999.
Brilliant.
But one of their legendary coaches, a guy called Tony Hansen, who sadly passed away now, and he was a guy that got me into coaching basketball as well. And he was from Boston in the US, and he managed to get a couple of players, younger players than I was, into scholarships who went across and studied basketball and played in the college. My basketball, by the time I was 16, 17, I was working. Right, so I'd sort of moved on. If I'd have still been in full-time education, if I'd have been taking that route, I think that might have been an option for me to at least play college basketball. Yeah. But my life took a different direction.
Yeah. Any regrets?
Yeah, sometimes. But I look at my family, I look at my boys and think, if I'd have taken a different path, they wouldn't be here. So no, from that perspective.
And are you still involved in the sport today?
No. I do. Politics is my sport today.
Much more brutal sport.
I know when he said no contact sport, I'm not sure I thought politics was going to be a contact sport.
Brilliant. And how important do you think it is to encourage young people in sport?
Sport's brilliant, and I do this, and I know I don't want to touch on the work I do, but so much of the work I do is around giving kids an education, and sport is a brilliant education. Any sport, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you to lose. Mm-hmm. It teaches you how to react, because it's more how somebody reacts in a loss. For me, is far more important than how somebody reacts when they win. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, good winners make good players." And I say, yes, but if losing doesn't hurt, that was another thing I ended up getting a complaint about, because when England lost the cup final, I said it wasn't good enough. Those players didn't perform on the day. They had to take that feeling of what it meant to lose on such a massive, massive stage and channel that energy and make sure it never happened again. And that's an ethos I absolutely believe in.
Me too.
Sadly, too often our society these days sees that as the wrong attitude.
Yeah, you can't say that anymore.
People don't like winners. People don't like winners.
Yeah, you can't ever say that anymore. It's always like, well, they did their best, they tried. And you know what? Yeah, there's something to be said about that. But,
leave it all on the field. If you lose, you lose, right? But just use that feeling. Losing a big sporting match at whatever level, I don't care whether you're an 8-year-old in a cup final or whether you're a 25-year-old in a World Cup final, right? Losing hurts as badly, and the trick is to take that feeling, right, and use it in life. I've had massive disappointments in my business career, in my personal life, my sporting career, and even now, and it's what you do with them. It's how you react and to move forward. And I think people that have a good background in sport tend to go on to be more successful in life.
Yeah, because you can't control what's going to happen to you. You can control how you react to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I sound like my NLP coach.
Let's talk pizza now, because your first career was running a pizza shop. How did that all come about?
So in my final year at secondary school, so 15-year-old, I decided in the summer, again, because I wanted to be independent. So I decided in the summer that I wanted a job. I'd had a paper round, it had earned me a little bit of money, got me some new trainers, some new jeans, whatever it was, and I decided I wanted to work. So there was a new pizza shop opening in Redcar.
Yeah.
And I went along and I walked in and applied for a job. And the guy behind the counter, lovely man called Abbas, I still remember him. And he said, yeah, come on, join us. So I started out in there, and over the summer, and I think over the summer I must have worked 20, 30 hours a week in this pizza shop for £1.50 an hour. Right? And this was 1987, so £1.50 an hour.
Wow.
And I loved it. It was, everybody I worked with was older than I was. I met so many people. You think you're 15-year-old, you're seeing people coming out of clubs and nightclubs, and it's a strange feeling at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're stone cold sober trying to deliver pizza to a man that just, you know, is not going to be able to eat it. He's that drunk. And love that. And then by the time it got to, so I went back to school in September for my 5th year, big year, exams, all of those things. I carried on working. So I'd work Friday, Saturday night, 2 nights during the week. So I was still working 4 nights a week in this pizza shop. It's quite strange because obviously at 15, 16-year-old, I had all this money, right, that my friends just didn't have. So that was a really nice feeling. And then it got to the end of my school year, my 5th year at school as was then, so year 11, I think what we do now. And he said, I'm opening a new shop in Mansfield. Do you want to go run it for me? 16-year-old. You good? You fine? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I took my last GCSE exam on the Friday. I spent Friday night and Saturday night illegally drinking with my friends. And then on the Monday morning, he picked me up and we travelled to Mansfield, and he put me in this room above a pizza shop that had a toilet and a shower, a bed, a toilet and a shower in it. And the pizza shop and the kitchen was downstairs. And then that was my home for 3 months.
Did you love it?
I loved it. Absolutely every minute of it.
Yeah. What kind of life lessons did you learn at that young age?
Well, you've got to be independent. clothes don't wash themselves. Right, life doesn't wait. When it doesn't matter what you've done the night before. If the shop needs to be open, the shop needs to be open. But then I also learned that the fundamentals of running a business, right? How you handle cash, what stock you need to order, supply and demand, right? How to advertise, marketing, staff. I had my own staff there, so recruitment, retention, discipline, all of those things you see in a business. I learned in a microcosm of 3 months in Mansfield.
Yeah, at such a young age.
It was, at 16-year-old.
So valuable.
Yeah, and then to be honest, I came back. I think I lived at home for a couple of months, if that, maybe 6 weeks, and then found a job. Right, I found a job on a flat just because I'd loved my independence so much.
Yeah.
So to move up, but again, that was tough. So you're on a YTS by that point, and then I worked in a bar to supplement my income. Right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to afford the bills.
Yeah. And what's your favourite flavour pizza?
Anything spicy.
Oh, okay.
Meat feast, spicy meat feast would be.
Yeah. And views about pineapple on a pizza?
It's wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I'll tell you what's changed. When I first started at the pizza shop, if you had pineapple on a pizza, you had a pineapple ring in the middle of the pizza.
Oh, okay.
So a ham and pineapple pizza with a pineapple ring in the middle with triangular slices of ham in like a star shape around it. Whereas now you get these little chunks that they just throw on.
Yeah. That's interesting to know. I actually strangely tried blueberries on a pizza the other night, but it was quite nice.
I'm not adverse to sweet and sour. Just pineapple on a pizza just doesn't sit well with me.
Oh, it divides the nation, doesn't it? Right. Thank you so much for all your honest answers to the questions. We're now on to the regular 10 questions.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, you have to rate yourself at the following things. Do you have an idea for a podcast in your head? If so, we can record, produce, and promote that podcast to bring it to life. Contact us today to find out how. So, Steve, how good looking are you?
Now in my early 50s, lots worse than I was when I was 17, maybe. So I'd probably say I'm probably a 5. I'm overweight and I'm going grey.
What were you when you were 17?
I'd have said I was a 7 or an 8.
Okay. How funny are you?
Sarcastic. Does that count as funny?
I think so.
Yeah. So I am very sarcastic, sometimes in the most inappropriate places. So from sarcasm, I'd say I'm probably an 8 or a 9.
Excellent. Are you good at cooking?
Yes, I love cooking. Although my wife probably says I don't do enough of it. I do a signature spag bol dish. I love fajitas. I can cook most things. Regularly don't use a recipe book if I'm cooking, but I can't bake.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And my office quite often has a bake-off coming down. I just don't play.
No. Oh, and do you still make pizzas?
No, but pizzas on pita bread can be fun.
Brilliant. Do you drink much?
I used to. When I was a rugby player, I used to drink far too much.
It's the culture, isn't it?
It was, yeah. You'd have a game, 7 or 8 pints, and then into town. Now I like a red wine. I drink a lot less. And again, it goes back to what things I do. I went through a phase a couple of years ago where I was drinking a bottle of wine and a couple of whiskies every night almost, and it's not good. So now I drink if we go out. I rarely drink at home now.
Do you have a strong tolerance?
Yeah, I used to. If you'd have asked me 12 months ago, I'd have said it was an 8 or a 9. Now half a bottle of red and I'm probably feeling the effects. So it's probably a 5 now, yeah.
Parenting, what's your score for that?
I touched on this earlier. I'd love to say I was a 7 or 8, but in reality, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've probably been a 4 or a 5.
Okay, it's very honest. How good a friend are you?
I don't have many close friends, to be honest. Again, the downside of politics is when that's all you do and that's all you talk about, you don't get many close friends. But I've got some good friends we socialise with, not regularly, but every now and again. And I think if we were to ask them, they'd probably say I was a 7 or an 8.
And do you find it hard to trust people?
Absolutely. Yeah. You never know when you're walking down the street whether somebody who smiles at you because they know you, smiles at you because they've seen you on the telly. And I've lost count of the amount of times I've been tapped on the shoulder and people say, "Can I have a word?" And you dread the next words out of their mouth. Right. Fortunately, it's normally reasonably good.
Yeah. How intelligent are you?
10 for common sense. Academically, I didn't go to college, didn't go to university, so probably a 6 or a 7.
Okay. How kind are you?
I like to think I'm very kind, certainly to my family. I will do whatever I can for my family and other people. And sometimes I find myself doing things for other people to the detriment of me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
So again, from that scale, probably an 8.
Okay. And Steve, how good at sex are you?
There is, I quite like country music, and there's a good song called "As Good Once as I Ever Was." So I'll take that and probably a 6 or a 7.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you for having me.